afternoon. This is United TV. My name is Kamal Arkan. I am here with Sean Donegan. Today is May 3rd, 2024. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's lovely weather we're having. Feels like summer, not spring, but is what it is.
The weather is always good motivator for us. So today actually is my older sister's birthday, and I wanna congratulate her. Happy birthday, and we love you. And I think they're at a dinner right now in Turkey. So, and probably they just opened their phone and turned the session on and just watching us on mute. So thank you for all the support, and I love you, sister. All right. We have a lot to cover today. So we want to start as soon as Sean is ready.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we have a lot to cover. We're going to touch on the Delaware elections, US news. We're going to protest follow-up, also going on with the economy and US elections on a national scale. We also have our BRICS updates, as well as some comparisons following up the hospital costs, third party, the TPA issue. And then we also will get a little bit into international trade routes, which kind of relates to BRICS regarding the global markets, GDP, and those different international trade routes. So I guess we'll just dive in first here with our local elections.
So the local election, as you are getting that, so we have our kickoff event with Bethany Long, our lieutenant governor, who's running for governor for 2024. And our current governor, John Carney, did the endorsements last Saturday. It was a very successful event, and being part of her journey on the governor race is an amazing feeling for me. And I know that she's going to be a great governor. And like from a year from now, I do really want to help her out with the transition committee, which I did in 2008 with Governor Markell. So it's going to be a great experience again, because this is a little bit different than 16 years ago. Like the last time I did that was 16 years ago. So with all the experience and everything that we have, I know that it's going to be a unique experience. And other than that, there are other candidates actually still doing some events. I see some of the Republican activities, but very little, not much going on.
Right. And I know our plan, obviously, to get some of these candidates back in for another session prior to the November fall elections. During that process, I'm sure that some people have dropped out for their respective races. So, like, for example, Colleen Davis, we know already withdrew her bid for her position. So it might be not everyone coming back, not everyone's still in their race, but definitely want to have those who are in the running for their positions back at some point. So it is, like I said, it's May now, so we'll have, hopefully over the summer, June, July. That way it gives them enough time. We don't want to have them right before the election. We know they'll be busy with their campaigns, hopefully, if they're taking it seriously.
Well, remember, the key for Delaware for this election is the primaries. It's not the actual election in November. So why it's primaries is because right now, even though, I know she's going to win, hopefully, I can't say 100%. So there's always that wild card last minute, right? So some positions probably are more comfortable. Like I think for the senator race, Lisa is not going to have any difficulties. Sarah is not going to have any difficulties for Congress. But I think the governor race is the key, and I know people are going to follow the experience and knowledge that she has. Having the right background at the right timing is the most important thing. All of those guys could qualify these positions, but there's certain things that you can only learn in experience, and I know Bethany has all those. Hopefully, she'll be in good shape for the primaries.
Yeah. And also just one other thing on that too, as you mentioned, with Governor Carney, who was endorsing her, he also now officially, is bid for mayor.
For Wilmington.
Yeah, city of
Right.
Wilmington mayor, so that's another campaign, which I'm not sure if anyone else has announced for that, or if it's.
So I think there are a couple of people who are planning. I don't know if they filed it already, but they are. There are some people there. One of whom we invited that she couldn't make. Can't remember her name. I want to say Walker, but
No, we had Sherry Dorsey
not
Walker,
Sherry. There's someone else that.
another.
Yeah. Well, it will come back to me. So there's someone actually is running, I believe, but I don't think she has a chance.
And then is that election also the fall, or is that a different time frame?
So it's the primaries are, I believe, all the same time, end of May. Or no,
Something
I'm
for
sorry,
us to look
is it August or May? No, September.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's May right now,
So,
so,
So the
something for us to look at.
PA primaries is now in May.
Yeah,
So ours is later.
Mhm.
So remember these elections, Sean, they're very interesting. So like there is a senator right now in PA who is incompetent, and he was elected and he beat one of the
We followed
most
that.
successful men in United States. And it was just like that. He got it. He beat Dr. Oz.
Mhm.
And the guy is, I mean, he's there still.
There.
He doesn't know what he's doing, but he's still elected. So
Yeah.
that's why you can't really just be too confident.
Yeah.
So things can change.
Everyone has a shot, it looks like.
Mhm.
So with these campaigns and elections, obviously there's various topics that are discussed, and what the people have their certain viewpoints on, who they're representing, and we cover these topics, whether it's healthcare, financial, economic, education, job availability. So with the healthcare one, it kind of ties a little bit to what we were talking about last week and some of the other previous sessions we've had, even with Governor Carney and the other guests who've joined us, is this TPA issue regarding the healthcare billing, the third party. So we do have 2 slides here prepped, and if you just want to talk on this a little bit before we dive into our.
So the healthcare is very complicated, and I believe the way that we have these topics, we try to kind of help everyone to understand. Some of these things are not as easy to really understand unless you are in the business of healthcare.
Mhm.
And last week we explained what TPA is and how their role is, which TPA is a simple, like what we call commonly in public, it's an insurance company, and we don't know it's an insurance company until we are in this business. Now, today there is a different part of the TPA that I wanted to actually kind of explain. So because we have value-based agreements in place, and the way that providers are responsible for the cost of healthcare, and like, for example, if for Medicare, let's use Medicare since it's a public one as an example. So Medicare is telling us in program year 2023, we are gonna, do the financial analysis and then pay you anything that you are able to save for them, for Medicare. Let's say if 100 million total expenditure, we were able to reduce that expense to 92 million, that's 8 million. So that 8 million would be shared with the providers and Medicare. That's what's called shared savings. And most of value-based agreements are similar in these types of shared saving agreements. So the problem is we also have our core business of medical billing, revenue cycle management. And as you know, like on a daily basis, I'm involved with our surgery centers. And the other day, one of our client managers out came to me and they said, "Oh, there's a take back for 2 of the surgeries." And then I look at the time, the date of services and the payments, that's more than 2 years ago.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the slide right here is also a visual too, just so people can follow the story that you're explaining. Yeah.
So the thing with this is, I wonder what happens when these takebacks are given back to the insurance, because what they do, Sean, they offset this number, this dollar amount, instead of us writing them a check and saying that this is for this employer, this is for that employer, or this is for the insured population, they are just offsetting this from any random patients. So
kind of hard to follow.
right. So then, well, if you are responsible for the cost of what was happening in that program year, so if you were going to take this money back, how are you going to reflect that to the provider group? And then, or is anyone aware of that? That's the other thing that I don't know, which I want to actually I want to go after that a little bit to see. And this was one of the reasons that we wanted to have limits on the takebacks. So let's just talk about the revenue cycle management for a second, or a little bit, not second. For our providers, if we are not filing claims, let's say for Highmark, in 6 months from the date of service, it becomes untimely. So meaning that they won't pay that if I file that on the month 7. But if I have a claim from 3 years ago and then they find some problems with it, they can actually take that money back 3 years later. So there's a huge kind of like unfair equation here. So they are asking us to do the filing in 6 months, but they can take the money back from the providers for 3 years. That has to change, and that will change. And that's one of the reasons that we want to actually work with our state officials to make sure that they understand these unfair trade situation that we go through. And this is why United Medical's position is extremely important, because we are able to find these problems. If we just leave this to some random billing company, they weren't going to figure this out. Or if it's just the in-house billing, in-house service in their medical practices, they are not capable of finding these issues out. But this is an issue that needs to be discussed, that needs to be brought up, and needs to be fixed. And hopefully, with some more examples, we are gonna pursue this and make sure that we'll make some changes in the next year or two, maybe, but hopefully next year.
And then, does this relate then to the Senate bill regarding that Speaker Longhurst was sponsoring, with them sending out, which we know it ended up passing, but I'm not sure. I mean, it relates. But
that's kind of like this is like with some insurance companies, we work with them and we have partnerships in these value-based agreements. With hospitals, we need them because there are emergencies that we are not able to take care of in the outpatient settings. So my opinion, which I think I mentioned this last week, I think they're in bed together. So they're in bed together, meaning that insurance companies and the hospitals, they are controlling the expenditures because it benefits both of them from different levels.
Right. You were saying it's a percentage, so bigger pies.
Bigger pie, and then ensure the hospital. There's I think we mentioned this maybe last year or so. There's a term called most favored nation. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So it's used for the diplomatic relationships with countries, but that term is used in healthcare and for those unfair trade situations like this, where hospital is saying that, well, the insurance company don't actually pay anyone less than what we are paying, just because that will bring the market down.
Yeah, they don't want the average to be
right. So they're actually demanding expenditure. They're actually promoting higher expenditure, and that's why it's so embarrassing. I mean, I can tell you how much this bothered me, and it's more embarrassing that one or two of my friends that I serve in different committees, I saw a couple of them supporting this bill, supporting the anti-bill, the SB 350. So they're actually trying to put pressure on state officials to not to go through with this, talking about SB 350. And this is like just simple, like this is the best example of this plain lie.
Mhm.
So when they say this is going to cost 360 million to public, this is going to reduce this is going to reduce that, they are all lying. Anyone tells you today that SB 350 is going to cost public more, they are lying, because they are just lying. What you see on this picture is the net profit of a hospital in the second smallest state of United States with 1 billion profit. So while government is trying to make some attempts to get this under control. And this organization, what you see on the picture, with their sponsored partner, Delaware Health Care Associates, they are spreading false information and misleading public. And I think governor needs to take an action on this, because they are lying to public. They are misleading. It's a misinformation, and it's very shameful. So SB 350 is not going to cost, it's going to help overall public, but we have our reservations regarding how it's going to be implemented and how we are going to choose these members who are qualified for these financial reports to be analyzed. So that's a different problem. But this, what you see on the picture now, if you see this and then the hospital system is saying that this is what's going to happen to you, so call your senator, they are just lying. Do not trust them. So, but apparently it's legal to do this. That's called lobbying.
Mhm.
So this company, the Delaware Health Associates, it's a lobbying for hospital systems. Does not include ambulatory facilities, just
Right.
hospitals.
So you look into that before you.
This is the only partnership that you see in between hospitals when it's going to hurt them altogether.
Right.
So.
So that's kind of the wrap up update on some of the local news and kind of what's going on in our Delaware area. Next topic we're going to shift into is regarding the BRICS. So we will have our BRICS video up here playing. As you know, last week we touched on more of a general recap, kind of overgoing what is, right here, the original members, what the goal is, what it means in terms of the global trade with which currency is being utilized. So whether it's shifting from the US dollar, the standard, to an alternative currency. I think we'll have to just double check, but I think they recently were announcing which currency they were going to use as their standard.
Great point.
Yeah, so I think
They
they're
have
going
their new currency.
with it's almost like a remind me of crypto,
Right.
but I guess because you're not going to pick one country over the other, or else that would almost
So
deter the
with BRICS, I think this is going to change the future. We believe that. I mean, I personally believe that, and it's not going to change it good in a good way for the United States. So that's why maybe we are all more concerned. With BRICS, what we are going to see is certain advantages that we have. Let's remember this is a paper, right? So this is United Medical Coin, let's say.
Mhm.
So if I give you this and if I put $100 on it, and then if I tell you that this is worth $100, right now I don't have to support this with anything. I don't have to back this with anything. Like in the old days, there has to be gold equivalent of this in the bank, in the reserve. So now you don't have that.
Mhm.
That actually is kind of like the key of all these things. So if I don't have to back my money, my currency with gold, there's nothing tangible. What us, the United States, we were able to do is use this with our economic and political stability, growth, and the size of our GDP. So we became like the default currency.
Mhm.
So everyone else has to use this, even though I'm not backing this up.
Yeah.
So now We did actually not maybe make some smart decisions in terms of how we are using this leverage around the world. And now there is this other camp who's actually coming up with their own currency. And this will have an impact on our economy. And maybe a lot of efforts that we see in terms of, you remember, like we had to just find this world conflict,
Global conflict tracker.
global conflict tracker. Now, why is because we knew something was happening. So something in the last 3-4 years is happening, and this is affecting all of us. And then we don't understand why we have to support Ukraine there. We have to do that here, and now we have to support Israel. Then we have to go to Thailand. So all these things have reasons because if they are stable, we are not going to be in good shape. So they have to be not stable. So is it fair? Probably not.
Yeah.
But that's what it is, and that's why we are seeing some efforts here. Now, BRICS, since we mentioned this last week, we are actually populating our own database to make better analysis. And we know that it's not about just the GDP, it's about the oil production, it's about natural gas production, it's about population itself. And all that is going to make a difference in terms of how much BRICS can get more momentum to make an impact in the world trade balance. So I personally am worried about the outcome for the United States. So, and the reason we are discussing these is because we want to actually understand what's coming, so we can prep, so we can make certain changes, so we can be more accountable, we can be more responsible for certain things. Now, with BRICS, one of the things that we are going to see, and we mentioned maybe several weeks ago, is the two big projects that we talk about.
Yeah.
So one is it's called BRI, China's Belt and Road Initiatives. And the other one is an alternative that comes from the G7 countries, is the Build Back Better World, B3W is the alternative. So the reason we are actually tying this into BRICS is because G7 BRICS actually is incorporated against G7.
Yeah. So all these pieces are coming together. So as you're saying, it's not just, hey, these countries are switching off to an alternative currency just for the heck of it, and all right, you're just going to use this because in spite or something. There's obviously a bigger idea, the larger picture behind the scenes. So these other things they were mentioning, like take note of the oil production on these countries, on who's choosing to utilize the BRICS currency as opposed to the G7 with the US dollar. And then look at these trade routes that we're talking about with the 3BW and then also the G7 one, where it looks like China is trying to build, I know they even have like railway systems that connect all the way to London. So to have that type of control on trade by ground, but then also by sea, with the South Asian Pacific area right there, having those different trade routes via waterways, you have like the monopoly right there. If these other countries are saying, yes, we're going to trade with you using this currency and utilize your, trade methods, trade routes, then that's how the power shift happens, because you're the one in control, you're the one running it. And you're not relying, as you are right now, you still see like countries, so Russia relying on certain trade, and then the US will put a sanction on them. Well, all right, we're going to have to trade with other countries who haven't put a sanction on us, who will still accept our import-export. And then that's also kind of what we're tracking there too, is the imports and exports of these countries. And you'll kind of see that those, as more and more countries are joining BRICS, that percentage of the global trade is increasing to where it's almost matching, if not surpassing, projections of the G7 trade.
That's definitely what's happening. The other thing is we try to make some sense of certain events that's happening, certain the conflicts that's happening. So when you look at the BRI, the China's Belt and Road Initiatives, you see it goes through a certain pattern and a certain kind of like a pathway, and all those countries who are there on that road, on that direction, they're going to benefit from this. So the thing is, if your country is not on it, you are going to be kind of against that. So like if you look at let's use me as an example. So my other country, Turkey, is kind of like in the middle of all these troubles. So the way it is, the trouble is we see is that, well, this other B3W is actually going after it has a different direction, and it has a different dynamics too. So it's not as it is like there's one trade road that's actually we follow from China to London. It's not like that. It's actually more about like investing on infrastructures, this and that. So if you have to pick one of them, and if one becomes an alternative to the other one, so as soon as one is not done, and if your country is not on the list for those infrastructure investments, so you kind of lose. So that's why some countries are choosing making their decision based on these variables to see where they're going to support, and that's why you also see them on different sides of the table, because sometimes they are not happy with what they see, and sometimes it's kind of like confusing too, because Turkey's situation always is difficult. So like they're always in the middle. Like they can be on like they're in NATO, but then they have to work with Russia to help out the conflict there. They work with they're supporting Palestine, but then they have to work with Israel. So all those balances make it even more difficult, I guess, to have like their position saying that I'm going to be on this side versus to that side. And I think these big projects are forcing countries to choose their sides. So then once that happens, the BRIC actually becomes even more important, because once you're on the other side, then you have to kind of follow what they have.
Yeah. Well, two things on that. So the first thing, as you mentioned, that made me think, is it possible to switch teams later on? So say a nation says,
depending on what you bring to the other table,
right,
to the other
so
team.
you know what I mean? Someone's gonna be like, there's two captains, they're trying to recruit you, join up for this. We can offer you, this type of passageway, or you'll have access to this. But also, like you're saying,
it's not a favor to the country who's joining them. It's what that country is bringing to the table.
Plus, like Ken say, make up a country, they join BRICS, and then 10 years later they say, hey, I actually want to go back to using that. Like, will it be that easy of a switch?
It's not going to be that it's not going to be like a light switch. So it's not going to be that simple. It would need time to do that transition. But in order for them to make that decision, the other side needs to be okay with it.
Right. Yeah. You can just say, hi, I'm
right.
Yeah.
So and it's like usually those changes are not that sudden, or it's
not taken away. And then also, I'm sure if you are switching, that your country's economic would have probably initially a slight decline as you're doing a transition. It wouldn't just keep, spiking upwards, or else people would be switching often. I'm sure it'll have some type of impact on that.
So just like I mean, the relationship with these countries is very similar to the relationship with these Fortune 500 companies. So they have to do trade between those companies as well. So if someone is offering something better with less, then they will go. But even that decision is not going to be that simple. So
you have to weigh the pros and cons.
And because it takes years, that remember right now, I'm going to say, so we have it on the record. So if it happens, I'll take credit. So things can change. Things can change for Netanyahu overnight. He can be in jail like next week, right? So, but he's the one who was determining the country's future for the last several years. Right. So when someone else comes into that position, for that person to get enough credibility, and then just change the rotation of the country, that's why it's going to take several years. So that's why I'm saying that those transitions are not easy. Let's say in Turkey, like our president in Turkey, he's been there for 22 years. So when he sometimes fails in interior issues of Turkey, he always ahead of the game with the foreign relations. Where is that coming from? Is stability and the relationship that he built with other countries at the personal level. So there's an intangible value. So you can't really offset that. You cannot write that off because when he has this relationship with Putin or with the German president or the other people, the new person is not going to have that much credit from the get-go. So then, in order for them to change that direction of that country, that's going to take time. So because that requires like the settled power in those countries where economically and politically they can actually support that.
And it seems like countries who eventually do have some type of shift in the power where it's any type of even just not like a revolution, but hey, like we're not happy with how things are, so we want to, switch it up, try, elect someone from the other party, like whatever it happens to be. That's maybe why we're always seeing this like natural competition of, hey, we're going to end up joining BRICS because that might help benefit our country because by, maybe by using the G7, our country is not doing as well as it could be. So that's why we're going to try to take some sort of like some type of action to try to improve, right? Like no country is going to say, hey, status quo for the next 100 years, everything.
It can't be. So that's not. It's not. It's not going to be natural, right? So because even with the global currency, until mid-50s, United Kingdom was in charge of that. So we were actually like it was more about British pound than it was the US dollar. So that was only 50 years ago it changed, right? So those changes, the 100 years and do nothing, that's not an option. So you have to kind of keep doing what you are doing so then you are able to get the raw materials, the supplies and less expensively. That's the other thing. Like right now, like just think about it. US can easily destroy China, not in a war, but just stop doing any trades. Because if you're not buying that, who's buying it? So do you think they can be that independent from us with their decisions? No, because we are their biggest customers. Doesn't that sound similar with the hospital and the insurance companies' relationship with the TPA business? So on one hand, they're actually kind of like competing because they want to pay them less. On the other hand, TPA sees the hospital as their client.
Right. So you
or their
that compromise.
right. So then
you're trying to take a push and pull or take a tug of war.
So the Chinese president was here a couple months ago in California saying that they want to work with us even more. So they will do more trade. Why is that? Because they have to. So, but of course, if we don't really make responsible decisions on the financial side, things can turn into a disaster. So right now, like being at 34.4 trillion. So this is our debt, the national debt. That's 160% of our GDP. That was a less concern if you didn't have the organization like BRICS on the other hand, or on the other side. We wouldn't have to worry about financial policies as much because we could just print more dollars.
Right, so now it has the opportunity to
amplify. So now are we going to be able to get back from that? And that number increased incredibly fast. So that's just
it's exponential,
right? So, and there's no reason for that. The reason is bad decisions that we made from the political side, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, also you mentioned the UK. I think it's crazy just to put into perspective how quickly things can change. Or if you think back in the day, the UK almost had claims on like global territory. You know what I mean? Like all this territory they had in Africa, India, Australia, even into Asia, like that United Kingdom's like rule. And they said the sun never sets on the British Empire because it was literally globally that had territory and claims.
Right.
And now you see it. So
I mean, they're still powerful, but not as much as
Right.
they had before.
But something caused that, you know what I mean?
Right.
They were,
Exactly.
they had that.
Exactly. Well,
immense-
United States caused that, so we made better decisions in the past than we are doing now. So that's why I think you know, um, when we say we are going to forgive all the student loans, that decision is not like it shouldn't be one person's or one party's decision, because that cost is for everyone. And for what's the return for benefit for that? For everyone, not right. So like, why would I like? I don't have kids, right? I pay school taxes. Every time I do that for real estate, it bothers me. I'm like, someone has 4 kids and then I have 0. Then why do I have to pay school tax? There's some unfairness, but that's part of the system. I can fight that. But
Right.
now my taxes are going to go up. Your taxes are going to go up because we forgive some students' loans. Now, your student loan is not forgiven.
Right.
You are 25. How are you reconciling that emotionally,
Right.
right? Because that's not only a bad decision financially, but also it creates enemies.
And at the same time, think about the people who were budgeting, making those consistent monthly payments. That why is it fair to say, hey, we're going to forgive this person's enormous student debt, but the guy who's been paying it for the last 15 years, who, you know, sacrificed vacations, didn't get the new, you know, boat or something because he was being responsible. And you're saying, oh, you don't qualify, but somebody who has, you know, their income's so low, their debt is this high, like. I think when they initially did it, it's like you had to be making consistent payments for so long. It was like a very small percentage. It was
But then
like,
it got out of
but
control.
yeah, and they said, no, we're gonna do it for everybody. And obviously, it's not like. a
But you
legit-
didn't benefit from it, and you should have benefit from it, in my opinion, if this is happening for
Yeah,
everyone
but it's a
else.
very, I'm
Right.
sure there's a lot of fine writing on who actually can. You know,
Then who's making all those decisions? Already a bad decision is being also implemented in a really bad way. Now, let me give you a different example. We didn't talk about this, but I think I think it's time for this one.
sure.
Last year in Turkey, they had to pass this bill where they made people to become eligible for early retirement.
I think I remember you mentioned, I don't think we
I mean, I
discussed it, but I
like
think-
not for this format. I probably told you because a couple of the people who qualified for retirement who wanted to get paid for retirement retirement bonus, I guess, whatever retirement payment, but they still want to continue working because they were 50 years old.
Right, they're eligible, but.
They're eligible, and then they use that. They turned that eligibility into.
Well,
They cash that.
Yeah, it's like social security with us. If you're gonna start collecting social security, you can't be having. a
Right.
full-time
So
career stuff, yeah.
exactly, and the cost of that to the country, to Turkey, is so big. I don't think they can actually, unless they do something extremely innovative, like something has to be so powerful to get out of that cost, because it's every year you're paying retirement for these people who are still working in the system and who are 55, 54, 52, 49. That decision is a bad decision. Now, the thing is, President Erdogan kind of resists to actually accept that for a long time, but because of the political pressure, because some people wanted that. So now it passed, and now everyone is going to pay it.
Yeah.
So those are bad decisions. So that's why when we come to United States, when we say, oh, we are going to send 200 billion to Ukraine, unless we have some bigger return there, we shouldn't be doing it. Now, we don't know that. Maybe there is something that we don't know, right? But if it's at the end of the day, if it's just for the sake of the war, who's going to cover that much money that's given to that, that guy?
I can't cover you.
Right.
I don't have it.
So,
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, with that, a lot of things where people want something really badly and they, even if somebody's like warning them or saying, careful what you wish for, because then when it happens, and all of a sudden now you're living with it. And I didn't want this to also happen, or like I didn't expect,
I always say
to be built in with it, like.
we want to have our cake and eat it too. There's nothing wrong with that if you're able to do it. But if it's at my cost, then you cannot do it.
Right. Well, I mean, like an example, I think was if you look at some of the cities where they're like defund the police, we don't want this, and now you're seeing where it's, all right, well, we're not going to be taking 911 calls from midnight to 4 a.m. because we don't have the staffing for it. So if you have an emergency, you'll have to wait until, like, obviously that's not.
And all of a sudden you feel like, oh my God,
Right,
where are they?
where's the people to help? Like, why is the response time so long? Like, well, it's like you're saying this, you get it, and now.
So that's having your cake and eat it too, which is a disease. I don't know if there's an ICD-10 for it, but it's a disease.
Right. I mean, and the thing with a lot of these lessons is that you kind of have to live the experience to kind of learn from it. Because just hearing, or seeing numbers on paper, it's like until you're actually experiencing the moment, you won't maybe get that realization of like the real consequences associated with it.
Well, time will show.
Right. So we'll get it one way or another. So another topic we have here related to the BRICS, with that economic cost. We mentioned this a little bit, but I don't think we went into the detail of the automotive prices. So explaining the cost of, say, some particular good in the US, and we're trading on the US dollar versus, I know like it's a luxury tax in another country, what that ultimate cost ends up being just based on the location of where it's produced, the exporting taxes.
So the cost of the actual cost versus the cost with taxes, right? So because all these irresponsible financial decisions will have an impact in the long run, and some countries not just because they made bad decisions, but just because of their size and their resources, they are not as lucky as we are. Remember, we don't have any enemies around us. We have Canada, the 52nd state, and we have Mexico, where they're providing all the labor for us, right? So we don't fight anyone.
In the ocean.
Oh, Cuba, like I don't know if you want to,
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right. So, but if you are in Turkey, so you are fighting with 14 different countries.
Yeah.
Right. So there's huge tension. If you live in Ethiopia, you have your own regional states that you are fighting with, and then you have Sudan, you have Egypt, you have other countries around you that you are on a constant fight nonstop. That's extremely costly. So now the example that we have, which we were going to use that Volkswagen, what happened there?
So we had a couple. We just missed the range.
So what we say is that in Turkey right now, in order for someone to drive a BMW 3 Series, they have to pay 2.5 times more than what we pay here. And that is not because the BMW factory is charging more to Turkey. No, that's the same. The Turkey has to charge luxury tax to its own people to say that, well, if you are affording this much luxury, you should be paying X because the rest of the people are not able to do it.
Yeah, so here's like the Mercedes. So in the US, it's 118, but in Turkey, 436. So
this is a S-Series. It's 118,000. Now, the thing is, what some people don't understand is 118,000. How many people are able to afford that here? Right? It's not like just because some people in Turkey, they will see that and they're like, oh, if I do that, I will be able to, just buy that. No, that's not the case. It's still expensive for here. Is that the case?
No, yeah, right. Your average car price is much less.
So, but it cost, that we missed the picture. So it cost almost 3.5 times more.
Yeah, it was about 430 something.
Right. It's, let's say 3 times, 4 times, 3.5 times more in Turkey. And that goes to the government to support the resource issue and some of the bad decisions. Like if you want the early retirement, some people are going to pay more taxes. So this is always give and take. It's not like we don't, like I want to eat all day long. Like I didn't have any, and I didn't eat anything today, right? Let's just talk openly. And Anna, who's right here in front of the office, always criticize me for the food selection. But I actually, in fact, I don't eat anything until 1:32. Today it's 2:47, and I didn't eat anything since last night, so it's been almost 17 hours. Why? Is because I want to make sure that, one, I don't gain more weight. Two, I want to lose some weight. And three, if I don't do it, I'm going to gain weight, and I'm not going to be happy. So what we want, and people want, and the countries want, we want to just eat all day long ice cream, this, that, nonstop, but still be in perfect shape. I don't know anyone who's doing that. There are some TV stars doing it. They're on coke, and then they die by the time they're 40, 45. So now there is no perfect world like that, right? That's kind of maybe heaven, but in order to get to the heaven, you have to give up so many things here. So that's not also for free. So that's what we want people to kind of understand what may be coming to our way. That if we support some of these bad decisions, we are going to end up paying for it. That's simple.
Yeah.
So student loans, we are going to pay. The Ukraine, it's going to come back to us with taxes. If we don't get anything from Russia on the back office deals, like maybe they will give us something. Who knows? But that's what the situation is now.
Okay, and then so people are upset with what's happening with the protests. So this is kind of a follow-up to last week. We do have our new video this week, kind of weighing in the pros and cons, because as you know, freedom of speech is a big thing here in the US. And even some recent legislation saying which type of speech is now maybe banned or illegal.
So this is maybe the most concerning issues that I have ever seen in the last 20 years in this country, 25 years. So at least since I got here, this is the first time I really feel I'm worried about this much, because it can break into something really big. So last week, it sounded like we almost had some maybe, which we can, but if we had a disagreement or something, but we didn't. My point was, I was trying to explain when certain things are not addressed, there are consequences that comes with it. So demonstrations, how do we actually, what are the, what's our, take on demonstrations, right? So if you look at it, you kind of see this as like the freedom of expression. Fine. So you go there and then you start yelling at someone. You have like the yeah, it's like the pancards or like the posters, and you just say that, I hate this, I hate that. Requires political participation, and that people can actually engage in a way. There's some accountability, so then if people are able to voice out their opinion in different ways, you don't have to wait maybe until the next election. And unity and solidarity, you can actually have people who are with the same purpose can get together and do something without maybe having any types of other agreements. So it's just like because you feel this way. But on the other hand of this becomes a huge disruption for the system, for people, for everyone. So, and it always goes out of control. There's no exceptions. There's no peaceful protest that's for like 3 days, and then 4th day everyone goes home and then no one is home.
All right, guys, pack it up. Yeah.
So the violence and conflict, the polarization, misinformation, these are all issues, and also there are legal concerns. Now we see these, and I told you last week, I went to one of very politically involved colleges in Turkey, where you have to, like, even the person who was working in the cafeteria was like undercover police. So it was that kind of a setup in Turkey for our college, or we thought that he was. So then you have to be always careful.
Yeah,
so
rumors going around the
right, like there were at least 6, 7 of them that we knew they were actually undercover. And the reason was because they were always worried that some protest that's is going to start and it's going to go out of control. Now we see that in these colleges. Now, I always say we have to go to the root of the problem. Why it's happening in our country here, but it's not happening in Turkey. There was a dumbass friend of mine, kind of like a friend of mine, who's a journalist. I told you, he's like, oh, like people in U.S. The colleges, they are protesting, but our people here, they're not protesting. I'm like, dumbass, they're protesting the government, our government here. Our decisions, our government's decisions, and how we are supporting Israel. Well, Turkey is not supporting Israel, so you can expect the person in colleges in Turkey to support or protest against their own government because they're not actually being part of that crime,
right,
in a way. So, but he wants people to go out and then start protesting. This is never peaceful. And also, if you are there and you are not protesting, then how are you going to get what you need while you are there if you are a student who's not part of all those, right? So there has to be a better way. These are all smart kids. There has to be a better way. The protest cannot be happening in the form of 1968. There are ways to protest. There are different tools today that you can still have your opinion and then put it out there and then still get, still put pressure for the other side. Now, the other thing that I don't understand, Sean, maybe you have an answer for this. In this case, maybe many people also don't understand. Democrats are protesting the government who's from a Democratic Party. So, like, it's not like we have Trump in charge, and then students who are protesting now are protesting. So then there's kind of like a dispute between the two. It's the same people, like people, 99% of those protesters are Democrats. We have a president who's a Democrat. Right. So then what am I missing? Like, why are we still protesting?
Well, I mean, as you're saying, there's better ways to protest. So like, if you're not happy with what the government's doing, you're saying there's other actions, better means of protesting. Say, hey, we're not going to support, if this is what your legislation is going to be doing and supporting, sending money here, and we don't, by me personally, I'm not supporting that. Well, then, I mean, theoretically, through your vote, you can voice your opinion and say, well, I'm not going to support you if that's what.
So that means they give up on that. So they don't think that,
depends how strongly they feel on one particular time, you know what I mean? Because there's a gazillion things that come across a president's office desk that they need to act on.
You mentioned last week the Black Lives Matter protest. That time Trump was in charge. Yeah. And there was some, agree or disagree, but there was the people who are protesting were Democrats, and the person who's in charge was a Republican. It kind of made sense because maybe he's not supporting what they are doing. So then it's understandable. This one doesn't make any sense.
Well, another thing too, I thought was funny. I watched some of the videos too, and they're asking, like, it seems like nowadays there's a lot of independent journalism, or journalists that just go around with a microphone and camera and just interview people on the street. But yeah, he's saying, like, the people, he's like, can you point out Palestine on the map? And they're like, of course. And they're like, all right, I don't have time to do that right now. It's like, it's really interesting. Like, a lot of people
don't even know where Puerto Rico is, so forget Palestine.
Right. Well, it's interesting. But I think just one other thing really quick, I know we're running out of time, but the opportunity cost associated with things like this. So you were telling me about the one event in Turkey in 2013. So the graph is a little small here, but I can just really quickly, you'll see that at the optimum peak there in 2013, the GDP was almost 960 billion. And then you're saying there was some type of public.
So the public unrest in 2013, it's called Gezi. The cost of that to that country is almost 1 trillion in the last, I think 7 years. So what was available was 7 years. So because they were at top of their game, they paid everything to IMF. They were zero debt. They paid their final interest, and just like think them as like regular people, right? So if you don't have to pay interest on our credit card expenses, then life is better, right? But if you spend $3,000 and then the interest of 18 to 28%, then you make minimum payments. At some point, you won't be able to pay that off. So Turkey was in that situation. They got out of that in 2013, right in the beginning of summer. Huge protests started. They shut down the whole country for a month. And then you see the country going down. And when you look at, that's the opportunity cost. Today, they could be in the top 10 if that didn't happen. And the interesting part is it kind of clashed on this timing. It was almost perfect. Like in May, you pay the IMF debt down to zero. And then in June, you had this huge protest starting. So, and they are still recovering from that. So they still didn't get to the same GDP level of 2013. They're just, I think this year is going to be maybe the year. So this is also why we are worried about here, because that thing, the three students getting killed can cost us trillions here. Because that's going to shut down the entire country, and we don't want to see that. So those kids need to go to their dorm room and use their internets, do a cyber attack on Israel, do other things, but not protest in a 1968 way. So that's not going to bring any good for this country. So, and then there are examples like Turkey, who deals with this issue so many times in their past. So we try to cover a lot of things. We have Bariatric Friday in a couple of minutes. So we'll be back next week.
Next week, yes.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching us, and we'll see you soon.